everyone, welcome back to the Self-Taught Artist. I'm so happy to have you here today. Just a little public announcement. If I sound sick, it is because I am sick. I'm just getting over it, but you can still hear it in my voice, so I do apologize. But what better way to try to heal than to create some artwork? So we only have a few kind of main lectures left in this drawing section of our Self-Taught Artist course. The topic we're going to be discussing today is geometric solids. Now, if you've been a part of this journey from start to finish, this may sound familiar. Probably like something that we would have covered in the first lesson or two in this course. And you're right, but this time we're coming at it again with a more elevated understanding. At this point, we've had way more practice, and I'm going to be adding new supplies on top of the fact that there's just some more advanced topics that I wanted to discuss in relation to this. So if you feel like you've done this before, you haven't. This is those geometric drawings, but 2.0. So what exactly is the benefit to these geometric solids? Well, they're essentially the building blocks of all the artwork that we're going to create. Knowing these geometric solids is going to allow you to break down anything that you come across into a triangle, sphere, pyramid, cube, cylinder, you name it. We can then break it down into these shapes and therefore kind of just have a better understanding of what's going on and a higher likelihood of success. Mastering the ability to identify these underlying structures is only going to help you further break down any subject or object that you come across. It can help increase accuracy, depth, and realistic relationships. In a way, using geometric solids can also be a way to help you break away from thinking of your drawing as an outline. It helps you visualize the mass and the unseen nature of the subject. Get used to drawing these geometric shapes because they're the building blocks for all complex things that we come across. So, if you are joining me on YouTube today, you get one free draw along. If you're on Patreon, then you get all the extra ones. So usually I do one for YouTube, followed by 2, 3, 4. On my Patreon, I do provide the reference images so that you can have them for your own keepsake and you can blow them up bigger. When we begin drawing, the reference image is either going to show up here or here, depending on where the drawing is and where it fits best. And finally, we have to talk about supplies because this time around, I did promise we are going to be adding in more things to our drawing repertoire. So we'll start with what we already had. Sharpener, kneadable eraser, 4B pencil, and a white pencil. The white pencil is only needed if you're drawing on toned paper, like I am. If you're drawing on white paper, you don't need it yet. So the things that we are now going to be adding into what we've already been using. I'm adding in an H pencil, an HB pencil, and a 2B pencil, and a blending stump, which I'm really excited about because you can get really cool effects once you start using these. I like to keep it pretty simple. If you want to go ahead and just buy the whole kind of set of pencils that you can get from anywhere from F to 8 or 9B, by all means. And I do have links in the description box to my Amazon purchases. If you're interested in some of the pencils that I use, feel free to buy all of them, but I have this set up where you don't have to. You only have to buy a few very specific things in order to achieve, and then as we progress, you buy more supplies, but we start with just the very basics and only necessary things in order to try to keep it cheapest for you. Now, why did I add those pencils in? So up until this point, we've been working in 4B. And if you follow along, you know that I also ran into problems with only using a 4B pencil. Because it is quite a bit softer and darker, though it doesn't leave imprints in the paper, you have to push very hard to get that. It does go dark very quickly. And because it is a soft graphite, it does kind of nub down pretty quickly, therefore creating thicker lines. All things were problems that I ran into, you saw me run into. So we are now adding harder pencils The HB, well, the 2B is gonna be the softest of the ones. HB's next hardest, and then H is the hardest. And we are adding these in because it does allow you to really go very light and start very light so that, you know, you only go to these dark pencils when you really, really need them. The one thing you have to be very careful with these harder pencils, they will leave indentations on your paper. So what do I mean by this? When you press down on a soft pencil, it'll just kind of glide over the surface of the paper and not leave any imprints. So you're able to erase and take that graphite off pretty easily. With a hard pencil, because it's harder and therefore lighter, you're gonna be tempted to push down more on the point, in which case you are going to push into the paper and create an indent. Once you do that, you can't really erase it. You can kind of lift the graphite off, but you'll always have that mark in your paper. So just be very careful. That's why I always say to start light, as light as possible, and then go darker in time and in future passes. It's to try to avoid that. So that's just a little side note about the hard pencils, is that it will leave indentations, and you can't really get that out of your paper. So you'll always have these like underlying lines. So just be very, very light. They're meant to be light. I know I repeated that, but it's because it's really important. With all that said, if you're on YouTube, I so hope you enjoy this free draw along. If you're interested and want more practice, more draw alongs, more content, be sure to check out my Patreon. That's where I put all extra exercises and tips and tricks and tidbits of information, reference packs. I'm trying to build it for you guys. So if that's something you're interested in, please be sure to check out the description link below. All the links can be found there. But let's cut the cheetah chatter and hop into some drawings. So I'm going to be starting with my H pencil. As always, we'll kind of mark this out. With using a lighter pencil, it's also going to be a lot harder for you guys to see in these early stages, but I will try my best to make it as obvious as possible. You should have the reference pop up already. I'll just jump right in. So there's kind of a line halfway through, and the sphere is split maybe 2/3 of the way. I'm kind of messy about this right now. It's my first drawing in a while, but I'm gonna erase all these little scratchy marks once I kind of feel like I get the shape laid in a little bit better. The shadow is like 1/3 of the way in. There, it softens. I'm gonna go in with my kneadable eraser. Some of those kind of hatchy lines and put in a bit more of a definitive shape. Don't forget the angle on these spheres are really important. That is what tells you what the underlying shape and structure is. So that's very important to get right. I'm pretty happy with that. Using the H, let's just kind of lightly shade in some of these shadow shapes, and then we'll go to our white pencil. To cover a lot of surface area, make sure you turn your pencil to the side. That'll also kind of help you avoid indenting too hard. This background, I want to make sure that that transition on this side stays pretty soft, so I don't really care how specific it is, and then we'll go in, get get some of this shadow shape. Whenever I'm first laying in these shadows as well, one of the things I'm thinking about is the shape of the circle. So this is kind of one of my opportunities to clean up the edge and make sure that that's correct. Again, using this opportunity to perfect and start to build up these lost edges around places. I'm just tightening up the look of that circle. But it also helps create the illusion of a disappearing edge. Before we jump into the white pencil, one of the things I want to do first is take our blending stump. This is something I'm going to be utilizing in all future drawings. You don't have to do this. You can keep doing it exactly how we've been doing it before without this. However, you will see that we're able to get slightly different kind of looks to certain things, and it can also be really beneficial in allowing for that atmospheric depth, and it can help you blur so that you can then sharpen and really get that pop and sense of realism in your drawing. Again, you can do it without it just fine. You can still use your finger if you need to blend, but as far as doing it this early on in the drawing, I'll leave that up to you whether you continue to do it or not, because it does kind of come down to a feel and a stylistic choice. I think it leads to really cool effects, which you can then play with a lot later. But just wanted to say, you don't have to. Let's try it for this one. If you don't like it or you want to keep practicing without it, that's totally fine. But you will see me continue to do this. So let's go in, and with this blending stump, everything that we just drew, we now go through and soften. I try to soften in the same direction or the exact opposite direction of how I drew it. This can lead to the most blended looking effects. I also am kind of pushing this graphite around a little bit, so I'm pushing it into the table, already kind of establishing a soft edge there because that's not where our attention is going to lie, or our focal point is. And then also with this background, I'm just taking the excess and kind of working it up and creating a very soft edge there. Same thing, this cast shadow. I'm gonna do that. That edge can stay quite soft. That edge can stay quite soft, and we'll sharpen it up later. But this way, we kind of just already have some soft edges built in. And then the same thing, we use this to push graphite around. Just slowly start. Now we kind of like have the soft edges already. And all we have to do is add sharpness to it to like bring it forward. So with that, let's go in with our white pencil now and key in our highest highlight, which looks like it's basically right here. So I'm gonna squint. It's definitely our brightest, maybe a little bit in there, but start light. The other thing I want to remember, is that this is a white sphere and I want to make sure I'm giving that impression. The other thing is that this is kind of a bit more of like a hard edge. So I am gonna coat this with a little bit of white just so that we make sure it reads as a white sphere. Squinting and looking at where those whitest whites are. Softening it a little bit just because it is a circle, not a square. And then just lightly kind of softening. Taking a step back, there is a little bit more of a line right there than I wanted, but that's fine. Let me just build it up. Now let's try going one step further by bringing in our HB pencil. So remember, this is one step darker, and therefore we need to be one step more careful and picky about where we put it. More of a hard line. I like to kind of go in and pick where these like hard edges are. That's one of my favorite things to start off telling myself. Remember, we are still working with a hard pencil. That's what the H stands for. So you can really create that depression in your paper. We want to avoid that. We'll blend this again with the blending stump, but it is just really good practice to try to keep those transitions really soft without the use of that. That kind of shows really good pencil control and understanding. So I try to do as much as I can with just the pencil, but obviously if we want that really soft look, we're gonna need to go to the blending stump. But do as much as you can with just the pencil, and you can do that by changing directions. So if I start this way, then like go this way, go diagonal, and you can kind of build up, softness that way. And then let's put in where I see the darkest part of this shadow, which is definitely right under the sphere. That's kind of the core of it. And then it kind of leaks out a little bit this way, but not all the way to the far edge. There's also a little bit of darkness out in here. As you can probably tell, that we're getting into the slowness of what this actually takes. A really heightened sense of realism comes from patience and layer building. The other thing I'm going to put in this HB is more of this foreshadow in the object. I'm just going to do a little bit of a blur check, so I'm squinting my eyes. You know what, let's just go a little bit darker here. All right, back in with the blending stump. Being really careful not to get into that white, because it'll be really hard to get out. For time's sake, I'm actually going to skip the 2B this time. You can do that and you just repeat this process one more time, but because I don't want to take all of your attention, and we have a few more to get through, let's just kind of skip ahead, and I'm going to build up with the 4B. And you can already see immediately with working with this soft pencil how much of a difference that is. And you know, up to this point, this was the only pencil we've been working with, and you can see why we ran into some of the problems that we did. And it's just because it is very soft, it is very dark, so it's really easy to just do too much too fast. Again, using this opportunity to create a very sharp edge, since there is a very sharp edge here. Making sure this cast, or this core shadow is dark. We'll build out from there, but so here's where we start to really analyze gradients as well. And bounced light, which we do have a little bit of. There's a little bit of kind of bounce light in this shadow. There's a little bit in the sphere. I don't want to do too much now that I have the 4B. I feel like I'm like holding a knife. I just have to tell myself to be really careful. To B, and just kind of knock down this tone as well. I was unsure how light it really was, but I think it's gonna make the cylinder just pop that much more. Being very careful of that beautiful sharp edge we just created. So I'm gonna go along there and then blend out. I'm just going up into this white and kind of mixing things into each other a little bit. Establishing that line. So that is how we utilize this new technique of using more pencils and the blending stump, and of course, reiterate the importance of geometric solids, which appear in even the most complex of subject matters. So practice now, get used to the sense of light moving on objects now, and the study of this is only going to help you be a more competent artist down the line. So I hope you found this helpful. If you're looking for more content like this and want more draw along videos like this and exercises, make sure to check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for joining me today as we continue to progress through the self-taught artist curriculum. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I can't wait to see you in the next one.